Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining me. Today I wanted to take some time and talk about my Mormon mission. It's been 10 years since I went on this mission, so with this time that we have to be inside our houses and think and reflect and clean out a bunch of stuff, all of this led me to a couple of weeks ago finding my box of letters that I kept from my mission. And I originally filmed this and it was just me reacting to all these random letters, but honestly, if I was gonna post a video about my mission, I wanted it to be more than me just looking at some letter that I received, 10 years ago. I wanted it to be a little bit more. So I'm gonna talk to you a little bit about my experience as a Mormon missionary. I will be honest with you that not everything was positive about my mission, and I will be critical about it because there are some things that at the moment bugged me, and when I look back on it, it still bugs me, so I will be mentioning some of those. But I don't think that by any means this is going to be like a bash on Mormon missions or anything like that. This is just going to be sort of my experience and my thoughts on a very unique experience that only a very small percentage of the world will ever go through. So when new people meet me and they get to know me for a while and they learned that I was a Mormon missionary, I think it's usually a bit of a surprise for them. And they ask me a few of the same questions. So they usually ask me why, where did I go, and what did I do? So I'm kind of gonna cover those subjects quickly. So I went on the mission because I wanted to. As a woman, I never had the kind of pressure that men have to go on a mission. It is a culturally expected task for men to go on mission. So by the time that I turned 20 and a half, me going on mission, I don't think was surprising to a lot of people because they knew me, but it was definitely a choice that I got to make. And so because this was a choice and not an expectation, I really wanted to go because I found the church to be really important in my life. Certainly when I was a teenager, I never had a parent that pressured me into going to church with them. So this was truly something that I had aspired to. And finally, when I turned 20 and a half, I decided to get ready and get my paperwork ready in order to submit it and sort of be called somewhere. And so that leads me to, where did I go? Mormon missionaries do not get to choose where they go on the mission. They are assigned a mission area by leaders of the church, like the main leaders of the Mormon church. There's a special committee that their job is to look at missionary applications and assign them where to go in the world and also what language they're going to speak. For me, I was called to serve in the Washington, D.C. South Mission. I also was called to serve in the Spanish language. I'm a native Spanish speaker, so that was not a surprise there. So that actually changed my MTC experience. I had to be there for only 3 weeks instead of most of my companions who had to be there 6 weeks because they had to learn Spanish for the first time. I loved that I got sent there. I love U.S. history so much, and I was living in Washington, D.C. area, for such a long time, for a year and a half. And it was amazing. My mission president was really kind to us and allowed us to go into DC and go to museums and things like that about once a transfer. And so in a transfer on a mission is a section of time of 6 weeks. And so every 6 weeks we had an opportunity to go into DC. I didn't take that opportunity every single transfer because sometimes it just wasn't possible because there were certain rules that I had to follow. But I tried to go as much as I could. I think I made it out half the time, so about 5 or 6 times into DC. It was amazing. I will tell you that one of two of the greatest experiences in terms of being a tourist was visiting the Lincoln Memorial. That was incredible. That happened toward the beginning of my mission, and it took my breath away. It felt just so holy, and I don't know how to explain it any other way. And then the other thing that was amazing was my last day of the mission, my companion and I, we lived in Arlington and we rushed to the Arlington Cemetery. I had never had the opportunity to attend. It was never in my area, but it was during my last area, and then we made time for it on my last day there. And it was amazing. I got to see the changing of the guard at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. It was very emotional for me. It felt very appropriate because I was about to leave my mission and sort of change the guard and bring new missionaries in. Like, it felt very nostalgic, and like it was just a really cool way for me to finish the mission. So it was just like a really magical place for me. I felt like DC was just the perfect area for me. It was also incredibly diverse. I served in the Latin American community. That was like my target community. And because I was in Washington, D.C., such a diverse area, I actually met a person from every single Spanish-speaking country except Equatorial Guinea. But I got a chance to meet someone from every single country, which is pretty amazing. What else? Food. I also get asked a lot about the food that I ate because I think a lot of missionaries have fun stories to talk about the food or how much food or whatever. I will say in my mission, it was a well-known fact that we were to eat everything that was presented to us. We had to finish our meal. We had to always compliment the meal upon the first bite. Like, there were just sort of these cultural aspects to eating in a Hispanic household. One thing that caused me a lot of anxiety was that I would gain a lot of weight because I was fed so much, and spoiler alert,
I gained so much weight.
I gained like 40 pounds. But it was always really delicious. I was really, really lucky. I didn't eat weird things. Well, I did. I ate 2 weird things, and I only, out of all the meals that I was fed, and I was fed so much, out of all the meals that I was fed, I was only fed one thing that I just couldn't stomach. And I had to like eat tortillas to sort of try to make it go down. It was a really gross bean soup. I love beans, but not whatever they served me. So I was really lucky. I will tell you a couple stories though. There was a time in which my companion and I, we sort of went our separate ways during church, and we're talking to a bunch of sisters, like ladies from the ward. And we both booked ourselves for lunch for a particular day. So we overbooked, and it was 2 big lunches, and lunches were huge. Like, they were not a little sandwich with some chips. Like, it was like a big, like, dinner-sized meal. And we went to the first house, and by the way, we didn't realize this until like the day of. Like, for whatever reason, we didn't take note that we had both scheduled us for lunch. And so we went to the first lunch, and by the time that we realized that we couldn't cancel. So we went to the first lunch, and it was a Peruvian woman's house, and we had lomo saltado, which, by the way, is one of my favorite Peruvian dishes. And I'll tell you what it has. It has rice. It's a bed of rice with a stir fry of French fries, steak, tomatoes, and onions, among other things. It's absolutely delicious. But there's rice and French fries in it, which means it's very heavy. And so we ate all of it. It was a huge portion. This was not served family style. This was like served to you on your plate. We ate everything. It was absolutely delicious. Then we went to the next house. It was a Bolivian woman's house. She fed us salchipapas, which is a very similar dish of a bed of French fries, this time with salchichas, which are
with like how do you say salchichas?
with sausage and like tomatoes and onions and stuff. Only these onions were raw, and so it was just like so much food. And the second woman gave us flan for dessert, and I have to tell you, I don't like flan unless it is made in a very particular way. I don't like flan typically. It's not a dessert that I enjoy unless it's made well, and this one was not. It was so gross, and she gave me a huge piece of it. I couldn't finish it. This was the first time that I didn't finish a meal. She did not invite us back. She was very sad. I think she could tell that we were struggling to eat, and so I think she maybe thought that we didn't like it. And you might think to yourself, well, why didn't you cancel? Or why did you finish all of your food? Or like, why didn't you just tell her you were not hungry? And the thing is that these women, you know, looked so forward to feeding the missionaries. It's like such a special thing for members to feed the missionaries. And I know that she woke up early and she worked really hard on this meal. I'm not about to be like, no, thanks. It was our screw up, so I'm not going to eat your food. Absolutely not. So yeah, we ate it, and our skirts barely fit, and I had to unzip it in the car, and I could barely walk for the next hour, but I'd do it all over again because I loved these people. That same woman who fed me that lomo saltado also fed me cow heart, which is a Peruvian delicacy. It's called anticuchos. I was very scared when I first tried them, but they're actually really delicious, so much so that I requested to eat them in the future. And she also fed us cuy one time, which was really an experience I will never forget. It was guinea pig, and family had just come from Peru, and they brought her some, and she wanted to feed it to the sisters because she loved us so much. And it was such a weird experience, but it tasted like chicken. It was very bony. I probably wouldn't eat it again, but so that was kind of a fun thing that I ate. And then what else do people ask me? People tend to ask me a lot about like my companions, or what I did throughout the day. And so I'll talk about sort of companions. A companion on the mission is someone who is stuck to your hip for the entire time that you are a Mormon missionary, unless you're in the bathroom. That's literally the only privacy that you get. You live with someone and you are required to be with them within sight and sound at all times. You have to do everything together. You go shopping together. Like, you can't be at your house by yourself. Like, you do everything together. You have to learn how to compromise with that person. You share the same apartment. Within the apartment, if it's only one companionship, it typically was a 1-bedroom apartment, so you shared your bedroom space as well, obviously in separate beds, but they're with you all the time. And like everything on the mission, there's no choice as to who this person is. And so there were some people who I really struggled to get along with, and some people who I absolutely adored and made my time there a lot easier. I will say my trainer was amazing. She was nothing but kind to me, even though it was probably really difficult to work with at times. I was an only child, I am an only child, and I had never been around someone so intensely before, and so I struggled with getting used to having a companion. But by the time that it ended, I remember driving by myself when I came home and feeling so anxious because there was no one in the car with me, and just being like, I'm by myself, this is so weird. So you do get used to that companionship all the time. Even if you don't get along with a person, it feels weird to not be without them. I think that I overall enjoyed most of my companions. Like I said, there were a couple of companions that I really, really struggled with. You couldn't really call your president and say, oh, hey, I don't get along with this girl, so switch me. That wasn't a thing that people did. I mean, if it was like a horrible circumstance, sure, but if you just didn't get along, you had to learn to get along. So that was also sort of, that's like a huge part of your mission, like your companionships. I also get asked a lot about like, what did you do as a missionary? Did you really knock on all those doors? Like, was that you? And yes, that was me. So this is sort of what we did. Our schedule that I kind of remember, it's been, again, 10 years, but I remember we had to wake up at, look at this dog. We had to wake up at 6:30 every morning and exercise for a half hour. And then we got ready for the day. We showered, had breakfast, whatever. And then by 8 o'clock, like on the dot, I was expected to be on my desk, like in my chair on my desk, studying for the day, or like doing personal study. Then you had comp study at 9 to 10. And 9 to 10, we usually reviewed the schedule for the day, and then sort of talked about the people that we might teach that day. And then if we had to prepare a lesson, maybe a new lesson or something like that, like really review our day, we would take the time to do that. So during comp study, we would sort of like plan / study together. And then because I was a Spanish speaking missionary and most of my companions were Spanish learners, then they took an extra hour of their day from 10 to 11 to do language study. So during language study time, I would typically like journal sometimes I would do like a little extra studying or whatever reason. And then in one particular area of my mission, I had the opportunity to learn sign language, and this was really, really cool. There was a girl in our ward who was deaf, and her family was from El Salvador, and so if we wanted to teach her family, then we had to do something in sign language. The way that I would do that is because I didn't have any sign language like materials, and I never had like a teacher or anything like that. So what I did is we actually lived in a member's house, and we had access to a TV, and so we had these DVDs of like the Mormon hymn book that had someone interpreting the hymns into sign language. So I would put that up and mimic back what I was seeing to learn some words. And then I also learned it by watching this movie that that missionaries would show a lot about the story of Joseph Smith, and so we had a version of that was also interpreted into ASL. And so by the time that I left that area, I was proficient enough to be able to have a conversation with someone about the church in sign. So that was a really cool experience. Outside of that time, outside of that 7-month time frame, I used my language study time to do whatever. Then we had lunchtime from 11 to 12, and then we went out. We would teach people. We would make appointments with members. We would knock on doors, and I hated knocking doors. I never, like, if I could avoid it, I always would. I would do everything in my power to not knock on a door, but I had to do it. There were times where that's what we had to do. Out of the thousands of doors that I knocked on my mission, I only had success out of one door, and that was not enough for me to justify knocking on strangers' doors and being like, do you want to talk about Jesus? I was never comfortable with that, but I did it because I was a very good missionary. And so that's kind of what we did all day long. And then we had dinner at some point. And then at a particular time, I think we had to be home by like 8 or 8:30 or something. I don't remember what time we had to be home. We had to be home sometime in the evening. And then at 10:30, it was like lights out. We were expected to work every single day. There were no days off except for on our preparation day, which was the day that we had to do our laundry, to write our families, to go grocery shopping, maybe get together with other missionaries and like, I don't know, have like a rec day and like go to a park, throw a Frisbee around, just sort of relax. That was also the day that I could go into DC. Oh, and then preparation day was not even all day. It was, you still were expected to get up at 6:30. You did all of your studies, your exercises, whatever. And then by, I think, 6 p.m., our P-Day was over. So we had basically from 11 a.m., from 10 a.m. until like 6 to do the things that we needed to do. It was a very specific schedule of like, you wake up at a certain time, you do these certain activities. And that's what we did day in and day out, day in and day out, day in and day out. For 18 months of my life. It was such a long time. And I think that really contributed eventually to me suffering from severe depression on my mission, something that I was not able to identify until years later when I was actually diagnosed with depression. And then I looked back at my life and I thought, oh, that's what happened while I was in Manassas. That's why I was so sad. And I think it was just like, it was exhausting for me. It was exhausting to have to do the same thing over and over and over and over again. And this is something that I'm gonna get a little bit critical about. Actually, upon reviewing the footage, I actually do get pretty critical and I start to rant. So if you don't want to hear about negative things about the Mormon experience, like if you are LDS and this bothers you, like just skip till the very end where I'm like concluding, or be done with this video, because I am gonna get critical about missions now, like pretty hardcore. So I did not have the tools to say like I have depression, because I had never experienced depression before. I never felt the kind of loneliness that I felt on my mission. And what I'm critical about is the fact that we were never taught about that. We were never taught about the loneliness that someone can feel on their mission, even though they're attached to a hip to another person. I was never taught to identify feelings of guilt or shame or inferiority, is that the word? Like to feel less than other people as signs of depression. I was never taught that, and we never talked about it on the mission, which is insane because so many missionaries experience a form of depression on their mission. So many. I would venture to say all, but I can't speak for all. But I would say that so many missionaries get depressed on their mission because it is hard. And sir, I do think that we were taught about feelings of guilt and shame. They were just typically based around sin. And so whenever I would express to my mission president, whether in letters or over the phone or whatever, and I would say, well, President, I don't know, I'm feeling kind of down because I just feel like I'm working really hard and I'm not seeing blessings, like I'm not seeing baptisms, or we're not getting people to church, and I don't know what to do because I'm just feeling down about that, and I just don't feel like I'm doing enough. Well, the answer would be, well, you know, you just gotta pray. You just gotta work really hard. You have to, you know, keep at it. You know, you have to you know, it was like, do your best and God will do the rest. And it was always sort of circulated to things that I could do, like pray and read and repent and read the scriptures more and have more faith and expect miracles. And if I wasn't seeing them, it's because I wasn't expecting them and I didn't trust God enough. And that wasn't what was it. I was down because I wasn't meeting my goals, and I got depressed over it. And you'll hear more about that in a second. It's also really hard when there's so much expectations about like the numbers that you have to give. And if you're not meeting your goals, then it's easy for a person to say, well, God doesn't love me, or I'm not loving God enough, and that's why I'm not receiving these blessings. And so that's actually quite a big thing that I sort of look back on my mission and I'm sad about and I criticize, is how everything was number driven. So in my particular mission, we had, I can't tell you what the goals were anymore, but there were specific goals. And if we met these goals, which were things around like, how many investigators did we get this week? How many baptisms did we get this week? How many people did we bring to church? How many lessons did we teach that had a member present? If we met all of those expectations, we would have an apostolic week, and enough apostolic weeks would give you this prize at the end. For me, I got to have that twice on my mission, and I got to watch movies at the mission president's house. We watched The Other Side of Heaven, and then we watched Avatar, The Blue People, not Avatar, the amazing Nickelodeon show. Judge me. I don't feel bad, and neither did my mission president, so. But if you didn't meet that criteria, then it's like, you're not good enough. You didn't get the prize. You didn't go to president's house. You didn't do anything. And it's so easy to think like, why am I not good enough? Why am I not getting the blessings that I thought I was going to get? I'm being so obedient. Why am I not meeting a family? I'm being obedient and I'm knocking on doors, even though it makes me uncomfortable, but I'm stretching my faith and I'm not seeing any results from it. Why is it that I'm working day in and day out and I'm studying so hard, yet I'm not seeing these blessings? And I think that does something to a 19-year-old or a 21-year-old when they think, oh my gosh, because I got up at 6:35 instead of 6:30 and I slept in for 5 minutes, then I'm not going to meet the person and bring the gospel into their life. That's kind of a weird, messed up thing to say, or to think. I think it's weird to put that much pressure on yourself to think that if you're not obedient and that if you're breaking a rule, that you're suddenly going to miss this person, and that person's not going to hear from you, and then that person's not going to join the church, and then they're going to be damned forever. It's a weird way to think about it. And enough of that caused me to have severe depression on my mission, to feel really lonely, to feel alone. And there was a real stigma on my mission, particularly amongst the sisters, of depression and anxiety. And, you know, when we would hear stories about like,
oh yeah, I was her companion and we didn't even go out every day because there were days where she just sat home and cried.
I would judge that sister and I would be like,
oh my gosh, she needs to just get over it. She just needs to work.
and it's like, it's so wrong. Like, so I have a huge issue with that. I have a huge issue with the fact that we were not encouraged and we were not taught about depression when so many missionaries feel less than, so many missionaries feel anxious, so many missionaries feel depression, so many missionaries feel lonely, so many missionaries miss their families, and that's all they need. And that brings me to my next point, communication with families. As I mentioned before, you don't choose where to go. You could be around the world from your family, and you go because you're faithful and you serve your mission, and so that's cool. You know, for me, I was across the United States, but I wasn't halfway around the world. There are some people who get sent to different countries though, and they have to speak a different language, and maybe they don't speak that language, and that can get really hard and lonely, and maybe they just need to talk to their mom or talk to their best friend who understands them and give them words of encouragement. But that's not allowed. At least that wasn't allowed when I was a missionary. When I was a missionary, I could only call my mom twice a year, once at Christmas and once at Mother's Day. And those calls were supposed to be 40 minutes. Were my phone calls longer? Yup. Do I feel bad? Nope. I don't care because I miss my mom so much, and I'm sure she missed me too. And we were not about to spend only 40 minutes talking to each other when the next time I was going to talk to her was in 5 months. So I didn't care. My companions did the same thing. We all took longer than we needed to call our families. That was not even a big deal. in our view. There are some missionaries who probably think that, but I don't care. And I will tell you that later on, and I will say too that later on we had missionaries over for Christmas at our house. I was like, Elder, take as long as you need. I don't care. I'm not gonna tell you. You take 2 hours if that's what you need, because this is the only thing you get. Like, I think it's so sad that like people weren't allowed to call home, especially if you were going through a rough time, especially if you were having nervous breakdowns that didn't allow you to go to work, especially if you were spending days of your life crying on your bed because you felt so worthless, or like you couldn't do the work. Like, why wouldn't God want you to talk to your parents during that time? That has since changed. My understanding is that now missionaries are allowed to call home, and I think that that's amazing. I think that's wonderful. I wish that I had that. The other thing I'm going to say is that because I only had letters, and because that was the only way that people could communicate with me, it was so amazing when people wrote me. I will share this little quick side bit. When I was a member, like before I went on my mission, I was a member, and there was a missionary who was serving in my area, and he would write me, like after he left, he would write me letters every once in a while. It wasn't very, I wouldn't say it was like frequent. And I do feel the need to insert that these letters were never romantic in nature. He never once like told me anything inappropriate, and neither did I. Nothing like that was ever spoken. They were literally about like, oh look, here's my companion, and this is what we're doing, and this is a family. Very missionary appropriate letters. And I had a bit of a crush on him, so I was like, oh my gosh, like he's writing me. And when I went on my mission, I was like,
I can't believe he was so disobedient that he would write me on his mission.
and I think it's stupid. It's dumb. Like, I look back at that and I'm like, what was I thinking? Like, that's so dumb. Throughout reading my mission letters, there was another boy who wrote me, and this was just a friend, and he wrote me some letters, and I happened to open one of them, and it's so sad because the letter said, thank you so much for writing me. You're one of the few people who write me every week. And or no, he didn't say every week, because I don't think I wrote him every week, but he said, you're one of the few people who writes me, and it makes me so happy every time I hear from you. So thank you so much. And so I think of that and I feel so bad for that elder, that this random person who was on her mission in Virginia was the person who was bringing this guy a sense of hope. And then I think back of this original dude that I'm telling you about, where yeah, he was breaking a mission rule. He was writing me while I was still on his mission, but I don't know if I was the only person writing him. Maybe I was, maybe I wasn't. I have no idea. But all I know is that if that elder who wrote me letters all the time, even though he wasn't supposed to, felt any kind of depression on his mission and my letter made him feel better, I'm happy I did it. And just to be, and just so you know, like, he did the same kindness to me, because when I went on my mission, that same elder who I wrote and we weren't supposed to, he wrote me throughout my entire mission. And instead of me being grateful for that situation, I was a jerk, and I
I
was
was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that you wrote me while you were on your mission. You were so disobedient.
but that was a result of my depression, which was caused by this idea of not worth, of not being worthy, or of not being, or this idea of shame, which was brought on by me not being able to achieve these goals, which was brought on by all of these expectations that were given to us. So it was just a lot. So I look back at that and I think, number one, it was cruel for me not to be able to call my mom, especially when I was so depressed, especially when I would cry myself to sleep sometimes. It was cruel that I couldn't talk to my mom. And I'm very happy that that situation has changed. Number two, I think that all missionaries should be taught about depression and should be allowed to see a counselor on their mission. You know, maybe make it a Mormon counselor so that, you know, they have some relevance, but they should be able to talk to someone if things are hard. Like, they should have medical attention. So I am forever grateful to the people who supported me. I looked at this box a couple weeks ago, which is what prompted this video in the first place, and I was overwhelmed with the amount of love that I received on my mission and the amount of care that people put into sitting down with a piece of paper, writing me a letter, putting a stamp on it, and sending it my way. Even if it was just a postcard that said Merry Christmas, like, that meant so much to me. So that is my huge rant about mental health on the mission and about communication on the mission. It's very important. And so now that I'm done ranting, I'm just gonna end with this. I loved my mission, I really did. Overall, every time I think back on my mission, I think that it was a really positive experience. It was a needed experience for me. I had great companions most of the time. I hope that I was a great companion most of the time, although I know for a fact that I wasn't. My mission president was incredible. He was very loving and trusting toward missionaries. I'm really grateful to him. My mission mom was really kind, and she and I don't see eye to eye on half the things in this world. But while I was on my mission, she was nothing but kind to me and to the other sisters in particular. And that made my experience so much better. Some of the people that I met in Virginia are the best people that I have ever had a chance to meet. And I can say that because as a missionary, I was granted the opportunity to go into people's homes and get to know them on a really intimate level really quickly because they trusted us so much. And that gave me a huge gift of being able to experience people's lives from sort of a safe place. And so selfishly, like, I'm grateful that I had that experience. But I will tell you, because I had that opportunity and that privilege to walk into people's homes that way, I met some of the best people in the world in Virginia. Now, 10 years later, when I look back on my mission and I just sort of think or remember, like, I typically tend to remember the meals that I shared with people, how I got to know people through food and got to help all these amazing women like cook in their kitchen and like learn from them and get to know their stories. That's the part that I remember. I don't remember how many baptisms I had. I don't remember how many investigators I taught. I don't remember any of these numbers that were so important on the mission. Like, I don't remember half of that. I don't remember any of it actually. But I do remember the people that I met. I'm really grateful to my mission and that time that I had. It really taught me a lot, and even though I'm maybe in a different place of my life now, I always look back at my mission experience with fondness and with a lot of love. And I'm so grateful to all the people in Virginia who opened their hearts and their homes to me and my companion to, to feed me and to love me and to let me teach them. Having said all of that, thank you so much for listening. If you have any questions about a Mormon mission, like, feel free to let me know. And if you did serve a Mormon mission and had an interesting story, please tell it to me. Would love to hear some more. Anyways, again, thank you so much for watching. I know it was a long video. If you stuck it out for this long, I really, really appreciate it. I will talk to you another time. Bye.